Hello and welcome to Fertility Talks, the Therapy Fertility podcast. I'm your host, Ranae von Meding. This week, I sat down with one of our senior embryologists, Nicola, and we spoke about her role at Therapy Fertility and how a cancer diagnosis in her 20s changed the course of her life and impacted on her fertility.
So I was diagnosed with a really rare form of cancer very young.
So at what point did you start any sort of treatment that would impact on your fertility?
I think I was given a pamphlet and it was like, well, you can freeze them, but that's going to delay your treatment by 6 weeks or something, and there's no guarantee it's going to work. Then we are also going to tell you that you're also risking yourself by doing that. It's your body, it's your right. Like, you need to know what you're signing up for. I had no idea. Person's going through IVF like a patient, when they have their baby, like, they've had a lot of trauma to get to that point, that like you're gonna have a lot of emotions and you're like, oh my god, I should just be the happiest person in the room right now, but like, I'm not.
So Nicola, thank you so much for staying late
No problem.
to talk to me. So we know each other because you actually work here,
Yeah, I'm one of the senior embryologists here.
which is pretty amazing. It's always like one of my favorite things to either like creep on the embryologists or like chat to you. No, it is, because it's like, I think for anyone who's like interested in fertility, the embryology side of things, it's like literally the creation of the beginning of life, which is pretty cool.
Even like when the girls, like when they come and they get like a tour of the clinic, they're like, and when can we go in the lab?
Yeah, everyone wants to see the
I don't care where
lab.
the kitchen, the toilet is. When can we go to the lab?
Yeah. It is. It's really cool. So, how long have you been an embryologist for?
Just 10 years.
Just 10 years.
About 10 years, yeah.
Wow.
Been a while around.
And what was it that initially drew you to embryology, or how does one become an embryologist in Ireland? Because I believe it's not very straightforward.
No, we all kind of came different. I came really circular around. So I did agriculture in college.
What?
Yeah, I did.
How did I not know this?
I was just like, oh, I love animals.
That's really
And
cool.
I'm like kind of from a farming background. So I did agriculture in college, and I love reproduction.
Okay.
Even now, it blows my mind that one egg and one sperm makes you. Blows my mind.
Yeah.
Still. So and I did reproduction in college, and then I did a reproductive master's in cows, focusing on bulls. And then from there, I ended up going into a traineeship. So I came like a really bizarre way around, but like there's no way to get into embryology in Ireland. There is no embryology course. Most people do like biomed or something like that, or they'll do a master's in England, but like it's big money, and then come back across.
So you ended up doing this thing with bulls. Was it like, was it embryology for cows and bulls? Is it the word bovine?
Bovine
Embryology?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, so I did it on like the altitude effects on sperm. So a lot of times what comes to humans originated from animals.
Okay.
So we look at it first in animals, and then we look at another cohort of animals and another cohort of animals, and then it'll start to enter the human trials. So it'll go the whole way through. So I was looking at the effects of Italian bulls because they're going up and down in altitude.
Okay.
And the effects of the temperature change on sperm and long-term effects of that.
Okay, so looking at that sort of a thing, like if you had, studies into this, that would eventually trickle into like...
Yeah, trickle down towards humans. Yeah, a lot
That's
of things
amazing.
will like originate from the animal side.
So IVF would have originated...
Animal side,
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that's where a lot of like the growing into blasts, like all that was kind of stem from that.
Yeah.
So there's obviously when we do animal reproduction, we get way more eggs, way more things to work on, so we can do lots more like testing, like what stage can we grow them to, what point can we do this to. So
very interesting. Okay, so then at what point did you begin actually working in human embryology?
In 2013, 2014, I started in human embryology. So straight after my master's, I was really lucky. I got straight into a traineeship really easily. I was delighted. And I wasn't actually sure what I was getting into. Really wasn't sure. My first exposure to... I was exposed to like fertility years ago, and then through IVF. But then I was like babysitting for this woman who had 2 babies by IVF. And like they were so precious. Like they were so precious. And like talking to her and talking to her partner and things like that. Like you obviously knew like what they'd gone without to have the children. And then like when my master's coordinator was talking about what next, like fertility came up, and I was still childminded at the time, and that's just the route I wanted to go down. Like I just loved it.
So you've been working in it for 10 years. What is your kind of like normal day to day in the lab? Because I think a lot of people don't really understand what goes on.
The lab is, we tend to do the same kind of things. Like the thing with embryology is very structured. So like we'll come in and we'll do quality checks. So like everything we do is so regulated. It's so tight. So we have to check every temperature, every gas, all the readings. We'll do all that each morning before we start anything, and we'd like check.
And is that like all of the equipment, like literally anything that exists in the lab will be checked every day?
So everything's on like 24-hour controlled monitoring, and then everything has to be checked every day and recorded and mapped and things like that. So we like check them every single morning before we start and see if we've any like the issue. We see from any issues. It might be that's 0.2 of a degree different to what it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And we look at like gas readings and things like that, because we want the incubator to essentially be like an inside of a person.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it has to be, the same. And that's obviously a really controlled environment. You don't have, if you think of your body, if you're 0.2 degrees hotter, you're like, am I getting a fever?
Yeah, you might be sick.
You might be sick.
Yeah.
We've got to control those things. So we are quite strict and we're quite tight. So we do that every morning before we start. Then depending on the day, we have thawing, freezing. On Mondays and Tuesdays, semen analysis. We have like our own like quality work and desk work. Then we've like the good bits, like the egg that people love, like the egg
fun
collections, the ICSIs, the things like that. Like, but a lot of embryology is not the embryology everyone else sees. It's all the things that go.
It's not
to
the
keep
glamorous
the show on the road.
You know, actually injecting a sperm into an egg.
That's a very small part.
Yeah.
It's like ordering donor sperm, or like people wanting to move their gametes here and doing paperwork and regulations and legislation. Like it's all just really strict quality process, and that takes up a lot of our time.
But I suppose that side of things is what allows you to do all the other cool stuff.
Oh yeah. And like you get really into it.
Yeah.
You do get into it. You're like, it's kind of like a game trying to keep it all together and keep it all tight. And like we get really particular over it, but like that's the main part of our day, is answering patient queries and doing all the other bits that people don't see, like the administration and quality work and things like that. So
what sort of interaction do you have with patients?
Here we'd have we use the portal, obviously. So we'd have most of our interaction be over the portal. And if anyone sends in a message, obviously we'll answer it. If we feel like they need a phone call, we'll give them a call. If we feel like the portal isn't quite suitable for the response, or they might need a bit more, then we'll ring. But we do like fert checks, freezing updates. We'll see them at egg collection, we'll see them at transfer, semen analysis, we'll meet them and things like that. So people don't see us as much as the nurses. Definitely not. They don't see us as much. They wouldn't know us by name. We're kind of just in the background doing the work. But we know everyone else's name. We know all the patients. We know all their names. We know who they are. But we wouldn't be the people that you see.
And what has it been like? Because I know we've had quite a few babies coming back over the last number of months. And anytime that happens, we go and let the lab team know. And you all come out. What has that been like? Because I kind of feel like you guys are the ones who literally made these embryos. I know you made them with sperm and eggs, but you made them. Like, what is that like, seeing the babies come back?
It's crazy, especially if like you're like, oh my god, I did that ICSI or I did that transfer, like oh my god, and then like it's magic, like they're here and you're like, I remember that, like I remember her coming through, even though it's been like nearly 9 months. You're like, I remember her name, I remember that, like. And like every embryologist will still remember their first baby. Yeah. Like you'll remember them. Yeah. You remember the patient, you remember the baby. Like, of course you do.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. And to see them, and they're so cute.
I was going to ask you what's your favorite part of your job, but I'm assuming
it's the babies.
It's the babies?
It's the babies. Yeah. I love it. And good news.
Yeah.
Like when you're telling someone like, at a transfer, like, oh, you've got one for transfer, and like you have so many frozen, and like you suddenly they're so relieved because they're like, oh my God, mightn't have to go through an egg collection again. Thank God. Like when they're like, or when you see them on the transfer a table and you give them good news, and like they lose like 10 years off their face because they're like so relieved to be here.
Yeah.
Like I love those moments.
Yeah.
That you can actually see the difference, because sometimes in the lab you don't always see, like, we don't do the pregnancy scans, we don't do the bloods, we don't do that. Yeah. So when you're there and you see the difference, and like you see the relief when they see us and they're like, oh my God, it's good news.
Yeah.
Like I love those bits.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back a bit. So obviously you work in the fertility world the last 10 years. You have a child.
I do. I have a 3-year-old boy called Jake.
How is he? How is Jake?
He's perfect. He's great. He's full on. He is full on, but he's perfect.
When will he be 4?
January. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a daughter very similar age.
Yeah, it's full on.
It's full on. I'm finding, especially at the moment, very full on. A lot of opinions, a lot of testing boundaries.
Yeah, it's just, and there's loads of like questions and talking, and then I'm like, sometimes I look in the rear view mirror, I'm like, oh my God, like when did you grow up?
Little.
When did you go from the tiny baby?
Yeah.
Like when did that happen?
I know, it's scary. It goes very quick.
Yeah, it goes really fast.
Did you always want kids?
So I was diagnosed with a really rare form of cancer very young. I was 21. I was told from the start I couldn't have kids. So I was told at that age where you're not sure where you're going to go, what you're going to do, that you can't have kids. So it was never something I focused on, because it was never something
you thought
I was able to have.
Yeah. So
it was something that was always kind of, oh, I'll deal with that when I'm ready. Do you know?
Yeah.
Like when you're getting told at 21,
yeah,
well, do you want a baby or do you want to live? So.
And is that what you were told? What form of cancer were you diagnosed with?
A very rare lung cancer. That has only ever appeared in like males over 70 in their large intestine. So I had no life expectancy. They didn't know. They couldn't tell me, is it going to come back? Wow. They couldn't tell me you'll have another 10 years. They couldn't really tell me anything. It was very much a case of, God, we don't know. Like, sure, we'll see. We'll treat it and we'll see. We don't know what's going to happen next. It was shocking. There was nothing wrong with me.
So how is it found?
So I was in college and I kept getting swollen glands.
Okay.
I was in college, like you're going out the whole time, like, you know, you're not wearing a coat, like it was all explained away, everything. I was going out 3-4 nights a week, like it was fine. I'd never been sick as a child. There was nothing, like I was never like a poorly child. And I kept getting swollen glands, and I'd go on antibiotics and they'd go down, and I'd continue, and I'd go on them again, and like my mum would be like, it's because you're going out the whole time and you won't wear a coat. I was like, yeah, maybe, like probably is. Like, you know, like walking to a taxi and stuff. I was like, yeah, probably sounds about right. And then my doctor was like, I'm not giving you another round of antibiotics. So you have to go and get an x-ray, because it could be like the kissing disease.
Oh, like what is that? Glandular fever. There we go.
And because like I was in ag, they were like, it may be you may have tuberculosis.
Okay,
but I was like, I mean, come on, like that's a reach, but okay. Like I was like, she's just placate the doctor. And I remember I went the first time for the x-ray, and the queue was very big, so I left. I was like, not in the mood. And I was like, can I have the antibiotics? And she was like, no, go again. So I went again. I just did not want to go.
Okay.
Didn't want to go for this x-ray. I thought she was just so dramatic, and she must be wasting my time. Yeah. So I went for the x-ray, and I remember it so clearly. I went in the morning and got the x-ray, and I saw like a white thing on the x-ray. And like, I'm not a doctor. Like, I was like, that's unusual.
That looks
weird.
Yeah.
I didn't think anything of it. And she rang me. I wasn't even back. I went from UCD to Vincent's, and I wasn't even back in UCD. And my GP rang me, who was based in UCD, and she was like, oh, you have to come for an appointment like now. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, you're really impacting on my day. Like, there's a social scene happening. And I was like, oh, grand. So I went up, and it was ages waiting, because obviously they wanted to wait till it was cleared out.
Yeah, to think.
And I kept going up to the desk, and I was like, come, like, I have places to be. I had nowhere to be. I was like, I have places to be. This is ridiculous. And I went in, and I was on my own. They were like, yeah, there was something in your x-ray. It's probably a tumour. Now, I don't want to scare you, but it could just be something also maybe stuck in your chest. I was like, sorry? What? I thought you said I might have a tumour. And they were like, well, I don't want to like say it's a tumour. Like, I can't say that, but it could be, or it could just be something stuck there. And I was like, what gets stuck in your lung?
Yeah.
And like I was just on my own. I was floored. And they were like, oh, do you want to ring someone? So I rang my mum and stuff, and she came up to collect me, and we were taken really quickly into rapid access, where it was
that same day,
about a couple of days later.
Okay.
Couple of days. That's when I knew it was very serious. You know, Ireland is renowned for being quite slow. When I was in the hospital a couple of days later, I was like, oh,
yeah, they're moving on this day.
This isn't great. But again, like, 21, like, of course I don't have cancer. Don't be ridiculous. Like, there's clearly something stuck there. And I don't recall anyone ever saying, you have cancer. It was just assumed that I knew this was it. And like, I did all the tests. Like, they were all so fast. Like, I might get a phone call, you need to get up this morning, you're having a biopsy, you need to get up, you need to do this. And it was just so fast. Like, didn't have time to comprehend what was happening. And then they were like, oh, you know, it's a stage 3 cancer. And I was like, Jesus, like, I know that's not good, because I know stage 4 is terminal. Like, stage 3, that's really not good. And then they did a treatment plan. So I had surgery about 2 weeks after finding out originally. That was intense.
And what was the surgery?
They took out my lung. And I felt like so sorry for my parents. They were like, oh yeah, she might be like 5 or 6 hours on the table. I think it ended up going to like 11 hours. They just said there was complications. And actually, to be honest, even now, I don't think I've ever asked what those complications were. I don't know if I ever want to know. I was KO'd. I didn't need to know.
So the treatment plan involved taking one of your lungs. Did it involve radiation, chemo?
So the cancer at this point had spread.
Okay.
So if you picture, like, it had gone from my lower lung out my airways and into like my lymph nodes around my chest.
Okay.
So everything was like just a step. We'll just do the surgery and we'll know for sure then.
Yeah.
And then I was in high dependency for about a week. Quite sick. Had to learn to breathe again. Had to have like physio to learn to breathe because...
Well, yeah, because you're going from like full capacity to halving that or less, and that's got to feel like you're kind of choking.
And, like,
or
all your organs have to readjust into this empty space. Yeah. Like, there's a whole empty space now where like everything has to readjust into that space. So it is, and like you know, you've to obviously a lot of fluid drains. Like, there was a lot of nerve damage, like around my rib cage, my arms and stuff. I'm sure I signed all the waivers, but also I didn't know what I was signing. Do you know? Like, there was a lot of...
So at what point did you start any sort of treatment that would impact on your fertility?
About a couple of weeks later, at this point it was only going to be surgery. They came to me and they were like, okay, like it has spread. We're going to do really aggressive chemo. And it was told me in like really fast, like, do you want to freeze your eggs? We also can't delay your treatment. So you're kind of choosing, you can freeze your eggs and delay your treatment and compromise your life, or you can go straight into key treatment, and that's what we would recommend. And you're kind of like left holding a pamphlet. No one really has explained to me what is freezing your eggs? Like at this point, like I have no idea. Like what does it involve? Like I think I was given a pamphlet and it was like, well, you know, you can freeze them, but that's going to delay your treatment by 6 weeks or something. And there's no guarantee it's going to work. And then we are also going to tell you that you're also risking yourself by doing that. Whereas now I know, like, that wouldn't have risked me. And at this point I was also told, because you're 21, we're going to put you in a medically induced menopause, which they like injected my stomach the whole way through treatment. And at the time it was quite a new thing, and it was like, oh, we don't know the long-term effects of this. But like, you know, like all this information's coming so fast. Like me and my mom are like, just agree to the doctors. Like, you know, like the whole focus, the doctors don't focus. Obviously they want you to be alive. Yeah. But they're not going to focus on, okay, so she's alive, what happens after
what's
this?
The quality of that life, or what's
like
the impact on that life?
Listen, we're going to keep you alive. We're not going to focus any further. Yeah. And like, obviously I respect that. Like, you know, they obviously did keep me alive. But I feel like they never gave me time to process, oh, freeze your eggs, stay alive. Let's put you in the menopause at 21. Let's see what's going to happen after that. I never felt like I was given much. Like, all of this is happening so fast. Like, I never felt I was given much information or guidance. Like, I never talked to anyone in fertility. I was never like redirected to like where they do the oncology freezing. Like at the time I was never told, go talk to a fertility doctor. It was kind of like, listen, if you want to take that risk, then we can talk to a fertility person. Yeah. It wasn't like,
just have that chat anyways.
Let's have a chat and then make up your mind. Like, it was like in between, oh, you might go blind, you might go deaf. Do you want to freeze your eggs? We're also going to book you in for a hearing test because we think you might lose your hearing during this chemo. Yeah. It was kind of thrown into all the other side effects. Like, oh yeah, you're going to lose your hair. You're going to have nausea. You're also probably going to be left infertile. We're going to put you in the menopause and we're going to do this. And right, will we start on Wednesday? And you're kind of like, whoa, like, yeah. And like at 21, you're kind of being asked to make a decision. You don't have the mental capacity to take it in. You don't have the capacity to make that decision when you've already been given all of that other information. Yeah. This is all in less than a month. Yeah. Do you know, like, it was a month of all that information. Like,
and also I'm sure you're dealing with not knowing, is any of this treatment going to work anyways? And if it does work, how long is it going to hold it off for?
When you're faced with your own mortality quite young, it's very sobering that you're kind of like, God, I feel like such a clown, but like, hold on, stop. Can we talk about what if I do survive?
If I want a baby
what if I
in
want
10
a
years?
baby?
Yeah.
But you kind of not made feel, it's kind of like you should be grateful to be alive. There's other ways to have a baby. Yeah. Whereas you're like, okay, but like, can we take 5-10 minutes and like just hold on? Like, you've given me 6 leaflets here at once. One is for a wig shop to go to, and one is, do I want to freeze my eggs? Yeah. While at the same time telling me you don't recommend it.
So you didn't freeze your eggs?
I didn't freeze my eggs, no.
And you had the surgery, and then you had aggressive...
I had a chemo. Yeah, I had chemo for 12 hours a day, 3 days a week, every 3 weeks.
And how long did that go on for?
3 months.
Wow.
It's very intense. And then I went straight into 35 or 38 sessions of radiation every day, which also, you know, damages your fertility. But it just gets bundled up in this little package, and it all gets given to you, and you're like, this is your options. Yeah.
So at what point were you kind of, I suppose, in the clear cancer wise?
Do you know, I'm now 32 and not once has the word remission been used with me. Not once.
So what does that even mean?
They're like, we don't see, so I'm obviously really damaged internally. So like they can see there is change, like they can see there is obviously a lot of scarring and there is nodes of concern. So they're like, we can't say you're 100% cancer free.
Yeah.
I just get checks every 3-6
Yeah,
months
yeah.
and probably will do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And that's just...
So you're a medical marvel?
I'm a medical marvel.
Is that what you're saying?
I am a medical marvel, yeah.
There hasn't been any reoccurrence since, has there?
I haven't required any treatment since,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
No.
So once you kind of, well, I don't even know how one does get past or move forward, but, you know, kind of, I suppose, recovered enough from the surgery, from the treatment, and kind of, I suppose, got on with life. At what point did thoughts of kind of fertility come back to you? Or, you know, did you ever kind of wonder, like, is everything irreversibly damaged? Or did you go get some checks? Did you get an AMH test? Did you do any of that? Or
Do you know the first time I did that, any of that, was when I started working in fertility.
okay,
Obviously, one of the things working in fertility,
the perks
is
you can just
you get these checks, you become aware. And I was, my AMH was really low, really low, and I was like, yeah, you know, I was like maybe 24, and it was like, yeah, you're probably perimenopausal at this point. And at this point again, I was told, you know, I'd really recommend freezing your eggs. And I was like, God, I can't go through I can't go through anything at this point. Like, I don't want to inject anything. I don't want to do stimulation. I don't want to go. At this point, I was checked out. I'd struggle to have gone to the GP at this point. Like, I was really, I was done. So again, I was like, you should freeze your eggs. And like, I was in like a long-term relationship. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like, it just wasn't, my mind didn't want to do any more interventions. Yeah. But I knew I was in perimenopause. And like, I have been in perimenopause since then. Like, even now, I know I will be going into menopause in the next couple of years. Like, I know by my body, I'm heading quite rapidly in that direction. Yeah. So it is. And I know I will struggle to conceive.
So how did you end up conceiving the first time?
I have no idea. Like, I genuinely and no idea, like, at all. Okay. Like, it was something like, you can't have children. And like, my periods came back, but like, they never came back proper. Like, they were always quite short. And my AMH was quite low. So like,
were you told without a doubt, like, if you want to have a baby, you have to have fertility treatment? You have to.
Yeah, okay. You'll be absolutely fertility treatment. So like,
so I'm assuming you weren't trying.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So when
to find out I was pregnant was,
where were you when you found out, or how did you find out?
It was actually awful. I was getting ready to go to a hen in Las Vegas. So I was, and I really wasn't feeling right. And like, my period, like, I would have gone through points of like, I would have like skipped a period, I would have gone longer and stuff, but like, I just didn't feel right. And I went to the doctor, and she was like, I can do a pregnancy test, but also kind of like why kind of thing. And she did one to rule out, and I came up, and oh my God, I thought I was going to have to be peeled off the floor. It took about, I'd say it took nearly the full 9 months to sink in. Like, I really, like, everyone was like, oh my God, you must be so excited. This is so amazing. And I was like, no, because I had been told for so long I couldn't have kids that like, mentally I wasn't like,
wasn't in
my radar. It wasn't in. It's like, to find out I could was like so jarring. And like, it kind of like, you know, I'd been years been like, you know, like, and we talked about it like in my relationship and stuff, like, we were like accepting of it, and like, we knew if we wanted to have kids, like, I worked in fertility, like,
so it was good.
It was okay. You know, we had like, we people we could go to, like, you know, there's places we could trust. So to find, like, if everything you believe for nearly 10 years is suddenly whipped out from underneath you, like, you don't just, you know, it takes a long time for that to sink in. And, like, you know, I had a lot of scares during the pregnancy. At one point they thought I had a brain tumor. So I ended up, like, literally back in James's, strapped, getting MRIs in my brain. Like, it was a really difficult, which probably made it harder to accept, because it was a really, really difficult pregnancy. Like, the whole way through. And, like, I know, like, there's people who are like, oh, you were so lucky to fall pregnant. I was like, I know I was, but it doesn't come without its own battles. Yeah. When you've told yourself 10 years you can't have children, then you're like, oh my God, what if I don't, like, love the child?
Yeah.
Like, I never knew I could have one. Like, what if I wasn't ready to have one? Like, what if I'm not gonna, like, love this child because, like, I didn't think I could have one?
Yeah.
And then when you're kind of, also, like, obviously in Ireland, when you're pregnant, the mother is second to the baby. So, like, if I had a brain tumor, it was kind of like, okay, how we save the baby?
Yeah.
Which took a while. I really struggled with that. That really knocked me. Yeah. So it is. And then obviously there was checks I couldn't get done because you couldn't get them done when you're pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm going out my CT scans, I'm going out my checks. Like, what if...
Yeah, your normal kind of checks that you would have had, like, every couple of months. Yeah.
That I like. I like them.
Yeah.
I like them to keep me. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I can enjoy another little while. But, like, I'm like, oh my God, what if... And, like, what if hormonal changes, you know, like, what if that changes something? And then, oh my God, what if I have the baby and the cancer comes back? And like, I was on, like, a whirlwind of things. Like, I wasn't overjoyed because I think I had so many other emotions at the time that I didn't even know where I was. Yeah. And then I was obviously still working in IVF, so I had the emotional trauma of, like, obviously working in the lab is quite an emotional area.
Yeah, totally. So. And then seeing, like, all the amazing things that happen, all the heartbreaking things that happen.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, oh my God, look at those women, like, who are having, like, their pregnancy scans, their transfers. Look how happy they are. What's wrong with me? Like, why am I, like...
Yeah. But do you know what? I think that's a common thread for people who experience any sort of fertility issues, whether or not you do IVF.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's something you see a lot, is people kind of wondering why they feel a certain way, or, you know, the expectation is that you should be so grateful, or you should be so thankful, or you should be so happy. But you can't kind of tell yourself how you're going to feel in any given situation. You just...
Especially if you've had trauma to get there. Like, like an IVF person's going through IVF, like a patient, and when they have their baby, like, they've had a lot of trauma to get to that point, that, like, you're gonna have a lot of emotions, and you're like, oh my God, I should just be the happiest person in the room right now, but, like, I'm not.
And that's okay. But I think sometimes people just you just have so much there's such an expectation.
Yeah, and you're so conditioned to be like, oh my God, how are you feeling? You're like, amazing. And you're like, I'm not amazing at all. Like, I feel awful. But, like, I'm not going to say, God, I feel awful. Yeah. When, like, I'm in the waiting room.
I think people should start doing that, though.
Yeah, because you're like, you know, like, I even remember, like, when I had Jake, everyone's like, oh my God, you must have had this overwhelming feeling of love. And I was like, no, I didn't. Like, but anyone I've spoken to after that, and I've said it, like, quite man, they're like, oh no, me neither. I'm like,
oh yeah, no, 100%.
I know you told me when you had it.
That,
yeah.
Hey, you're lying.
Full of stars.
yeah.
Like, you know, you can't do that to people, because people then are like, oh my God, I'm the weird one.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the one who, like, it's like, oh God, my whole world didn't, like, light up with fireworks at this point. Like, like, you can't.
But look, the more people that kind of speak truthfully, I think the easier it is for other people to not have to buy into everything has to be perfect.
And, like, I should have been jumping for joy over the moon when I was not able to have kids, didn't know if I could have kids, carry kids, have my own biological child, go egg donation. I should have been over the moon, but, like, it's also okay that I wasn't.
Oh yeah, it's totally okay that you weren't. If you were, fine. If you weren't, also fine. I think, you know, we kind of buy into this idea of it has to be one way or another, and it just doesn't. Like, you are a unique person with your own set of, you know, life experience that will, you know, affect how you react to things and process things, and that's okay.
But like, I definitely would, if I was going through it again, I would definitely freeze my eggs the first time round. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it would have solved a lot of, like, it would have opened me up more to the
idea,
prospect of having a family, as opposed to shutting off that compartment of my brain.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I shut it off, like, because you're told something so factual. You're like, okay, that's me. Yeah, that's fine. That's me. And you just shut it off, and you're like, right, I can't have kids. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'll do something else. And you're like, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll find something.
Yeah. And that was going to be kind of my final question, is what would you have done differently? And I don't like living that way, because I figure, you know, we live our lives, and there's no point in saying what would I have done. But, you know, if there is someone in a similar situation, you know, faced with these kind of really difficult decisions at a young age, like, what would you kind of say to them?
Slow down. Ask the doctors to slow down. You've been living with the cancer for months before it was found. 2 weeks to process things. It's not going to change the outcome. It's going to change a lot for you. Like, it's your body, it's your right. Like, you need to know what you're signing up for. I had no idea what I was agreeing to. Like, to be a tester on a menopause medication, but to feel like I couldn't be like, hold on, like, I don't know if I want implants put into me. I don't know what this is. Like, you've been that cancer didn't come yesterday. It didn't come this morning and it was found. That cancer has been there, and you felt fine. Like, you know, you might have been a bit sick, but like, 2 weeks is not going to change your outcome. And the oncologist's job is to get you better, obviously, but they're treating you as a cancer patient, not as a future patient. Like, they're not treating you as someone who wants to have a family and grow that way. So, like, you kind of have to be like, we need to just stop. I want to speak to a professional. I want to speak to a fertility doctor. Like, had I known now, it wouldn't have taken me 6 weeks to do a cycle and freeze my eggs.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah.
Like, that was the information I was told. And I didn't, like, everyone's, and just make sure you don't Google things. Which I think kind of, it scares you into thinking, and we all Google. We all go home and Google it. But, like, you need to say, like, first of all, like, stop. I'm 21. No, I don't know, do I want kids today? Because I'm 21. I haven't finished college. But maybe 34-year-old Nicola might want kids, and she's agreed to something at 21 she never, ever knew the implications of.
Yeah.
So, like, you need time to process things. And, like, you can get caught up in that, oh my God, if I don't do this today, I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to live. But you will. Yeah. But you also need to know the side effects of what you've agreed to. You know, like, maybe there's certain, obviously now there's a lot of changes, you know, there's certain things you mightn't have to take. There's, you know, I do want to have kids. Okay, we'll put you on a different chemo. It mightn't be as aggressive, but it will work just fine. Or we won't do this, we won't do that. Like, there's a lot of things that can be done, but the doctor's like, I want to do, obviously, the most aggressive, the quickest. Yeah. Whereas, like, you're like, I want to look at the big picture. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is like looking at a person as a whole person and not just a cancer patient.
And as someone who you're obviously making stay alive for a long time, to have a life.
And what does that life look like?
Now it's pretty great. It's pretty great. Yeah, I have a lovely boy, I have a fiance, I have a great job. Yeah, it's good. It's a good life.
You mentioned about struggling to conceive again.
Yeah.
Is that something that you are looking at trying to do before you go into early menopause?
Yeah, it's something I've definitely spoken with the doctors here about, and something that I will. Obviously, I will have to go down that route, and I know I'll have to go down that route. Yeah. I think Jake was a once in a lifetime, and it's amazing. I'm obviously really lucky to work here
Yeah.
and to work in fertility, that like there is things I can access, and I can access them quite quickly before it becomes an issue, but like there absolutely will be treatment down the line, like we're well aware of that, and it's something like it took me a while to come to terms with, but it's something now that I know we'll do and we're comfortable to do.
Yeah.
So it is. So I'll be on the other side of the table, which will be weird.
But also kind of cool.
Yeah. To see it from another perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're working on one side, it's really
kind
hard
of full
to process.
circle.
Yeah. I'd be like, do you know when we do that, it doesn't come across like that at all from the other side.
You'll come back from it like with all these notes.
Yeah, my little paper. I'm like, here's some
like,
hints and tips from a patient's point of view.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me. I learned a lot about you that I didn't know. But what a story. And
thank you.
I think it gives a lot of hope that, you know,
I hope so.
there is life after these kind of awful medical catastrophes. And, you know.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of young people now being diagnosed with cancer. So there's a lot of people who are going to be and are in the same situation. So
the message here is to kind of take a beat, talk to someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to fertility. And
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.